Yes, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas.
And what, we still have to listen to Christmas music?
Well, this is winter music.
Oh, winter music.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
Seasonal music.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's about snow and stuff, but not about like Santa Claus.
Very generic. All right. I appreciate that.
We're going to get our money's worth of BMI and ASCAP fees before the end of the year.
You watch your language.
Yeah, the audience has no idea what you're talking about, Tom Benson, but that's like radio insider talk there. By the way, if you want to see what I got for Christmas, one of my gifts, you can follow me on Instagram. I posted it up there.
Really?
It's hilarious.
I don't follow you on Instagram, so I haven't seen it.
Well, it's on Facebook too, so you can see it on Facebook as well if you want. But it's hilarious. My girlfriend got it for me, and you just got to go check it out. So we're talking about the government shutdown. Before I left you last week, the government had not shut down. Now we're all hunkered down, I guess, because the shutdown has happened.
See, Mike, you left, and then the government shut down. Thanks a lot.
I know. It's all my fault.
It's on you.
But I did want to say, because I just did that headline on the shutdown stories, I did look up on Twitter some of the shutdown stories. And while I'm not unsympathetic to some of those people, they've obviously, their lives have been disheveled a little bit because of the shutdown. The purpose of the government is not to give federal employees paychecks. The purpose of the government is not for the federal employees. The purpose of the government is for the country. I've noticed there's been a lot of conversation by the Democrats, a lot of conversation in the media about how this is affecting the government employees. And it's a story, no doubt. And like I said, I'm not unsympathetic, but the purpose of the government is not so we can have 800,000 federal employees. That's not why it's there, to give you money.
And a lot of people who are not working are, quote, non-essential government employees.
Yeah.
Think about that for a while.
There's a lot of conservatives who are not going to be. That's not going to work for a lot of conservatives, that whole argument. I'm not saying, I understand those people are going through somewhat of a hard time, even though they're going to be paid later, so it's not quite the end of the world.
But in general, it's good to have the government running for the rest of us.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is good to have, and there's some important departments that really do need to be funded, because this affects the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. So we definitely want to get those funded. But that's really more the story, in my opinion, than how this is affecting the employees. Now, before Christmas, this is when all of this started, you had Democrat Chuck Schumer, who was basically saying this shutdown is going to continue and Trump is not going to get what he wants.
It will never pass the Senate. Not today, not next week, not next year. So, Mr. President, President Trump, if you want to open the government, you must abandon the wall. Plain and simple.
All right, so that was right before the Christmas holiday when Chuck Schumer was saying that, right after the government had shut down. It seems like as of today, the Democrats are saying basically the same thing. Trump, you're not going to get your $5 billion for the wall. We're offering you about $1.6 billion for border security, but that money cannot be used for a wall. And what they're saying is no wall. You're not going to get your wall. Well, Trump yesterday on Christmas Day had a different tune and said something different back at them. This is what he said.
I can't tell you when the government's going to be open. I can tell you it's not going to be open until we have a wall, a fence, whatever they'd like to call it. I'll call it whatever they want. But it's all the same thing. It's a barrier from people pouring into our country from drugs. So you have drugs, you have human trafficking, you have illegal people coming into our country. We can't do that. We don't know who they are. In the caravan, 618 people were very bad, in some cases, criminals. Wanted for very bad. You saw the one man, he said he was wanted for murder. I don't want them in the country. The only way you're going to do it is to have a physical barrier, meaning a wall. And if you don't have that, then we're just not open.
So he's basically saying that the best way to protect the border, to secure the border, is with some kind of physical barrier, is with a wall. Now, he has backed down a little bit and says maybe it'll be steel slats, maybe it'll be some kind of fence.
Yeah.
And he also
he's now saying possibly drapes.
Drapes, that's going to be added.
Yes.
I hope. I'm actually a little upset at Trump for kind of backing down on that. I mean, I understand why he's doing it, but stick with the wall. If you're going to have a government shutdown, you're going to fight for this funding. Hey, let's get a wall, and let's get a really good wall, a little tall wall that works.
Now, the Democrats are arguing that there are more high-tech measures that could be implemented, and they'd be willing possibly to spend more money than the $1.6 billion if it were put toward that to interdict weapons and drugs either coming in or going out of the country.
That has been something the Democrats have been talking about for a while now. This isn't the first time they brought that up. There are some Republicans who are saying that as well, that, well, we could have high-tech things. And even Trump admitted the wall wouldn't cover the whole border because there's parts of the border that have mountains and stuff, so you wouldn't be able to put a wall there. But he believes that you would have to have some kind of physical barrier. And I'm with him on that. I actually think a physical barrier, some kind of wall, is a good thing, as long with other things. You still need Border Patrol. You still need the high-tech stuff. But I think there could be a physical barrier as well, and it seems like Trump is sticking to it. Now, when I get back from the break, I want to tell you about some deal-making that might happen out of this and some things Trump can do to alleviate some of the government shutdown worries. Although most of the country's on vacation right now, I don't know how worried most of the country really is. It's not chaos out in the streets because of the partial government shutdown. So we'll talk about that next. We have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. You know, one thing I have noticed about some of the coverage, especially on the left, about this government shutdown is the left keeps claiming, and Democrats keep claiming, that the only reason Trump is doing this right now is politics, political reasons, partisan political reasons, even though he has supported a wall for a long time. Well, politics is part of it. There's no doubt politics is part of it because, well, they're politicians. So, of course, politics is part of it. But it amazes me how they can say it's all politics on the Republican side. It's all politics on Trump's side. But what the Democrats are doing is not politics. Of course it's partisan politics. Why would you support fencing a few years ago? Why would you support some of these other security measures because you say you want to secure the border? And he says, well, yeah, but I think we need a wall. That's the best way to secure the border. And you say, no, you can't have that. You can have everything else but the wall. They're saying that for partisan political reasons. That's why they're doing it. It has nothing to do with their really disagreement about the wall. And it has nothing to do with money because it's only $5 billion, which is a drop in the bucket in the big picture of things. So it's as much partisan politics on the Democrats, more partisan politics on the Democrat side, in my opinion. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Olin in Alabama today. Olin, how are you?
Oh, good morning to you, Yaffee. I'm fine, thank you. Years ago, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi were saying the same things that President Trump is saying now. And we elected him mainly because of border wall. And one thing I like to say is the Democrats wouldn't do anything or agree to anything that would maybe benefit President Trump, no matter if
I think that's a big part of it.
The Americans. Yeah, even if it helped all Americans, they wouldn't do it just for meanness sake.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
I want the people, the government workers and everything, they have to keep this in the back of their minds. They have to be prepared, Yaffee, for government shutdowns. They just do. They have to be aware of it, save back a little bit.
Well, technically all Americans should do that at any job. You should be prepared for situations like this, have money in savings, have credit and stuff like that, just in case you have to miss work for a little bit. I mean, it's not just government workers. That's why I think it's hard for me to sympathize with them too much. I mean, they didn't do any planning.
They get every holiday that most normal Americans don't get. They don't get we don't get Veterans Day, and they're just a lot of them that they get all of them. I think it's 15 or 16, and the normal average person that works at Publix, Winn-Dixie, at Walmart, we don't get those days.
Right, Owen, and I appreciate your call. I'm not unsympathetic entirely to their plight, but the purpose of the federal government is not to have federal employees and to make sure they get paid. The purpose of the federal government is to run the country right, and a lot of those employees probably shouldn't be employed in the first place.
We've talked about this in the past. Politics these days is all about the win, and if they can deny a win to Trump, they'll do it.
And that is what all of this is about. It just makes no sense. It's like Marco Rubio tweeted out something the other day. Amazingly, he's right. He said, what do you want to do? Do you want to take down, if you sow against a wall, do you want to take down the walls that are already in place? You know, if Democrats want to do that, if walls are immoral, should we just take down all the ones that are already there? I mean, it's ridiculous. But I have noticed more Republicans, including Newt Gingrich of all people, he put out an op-ed that says that Trump should make a deal for the Dreamers. So have funding for the wall and have a part of the deal, some kind of amnesty for the Dreamers. And he shows that polls actually support that across the country. So that would be the deal to make. And that's a Republican who supports Trump saying that. So I'll talk more about that in the 8 o'clock hour as well. We have the Bloomberg Business Report coming at the bottom of the hour, and Alan Spector will be right back with the latest news on that shutdown and talking about what happened to another migrant child from Guatemala who died while under U.S. protection. It's 6:28 here on Good Morning Orlando. So Joan was just talking about it, and I just talked about it in the headline there as well. Consumer confidence is still really high in this country, despite what's going on in the markets, despite the fact that some are saying that a recession might be coming, despite the fact that the rest of the world doesn't seem to be doing as well economically. It seems like the U.S. and consumer confidence and business confidence is still really high in the U.S.
I'm fine as long as I hide my eyes before looking at my IRA.
Oh, your IRA, you already have people's 401ks. Yeah, because it really has taken a dive. And President Trump has not been shy about one of the reasons he believes the stock market has been taking a dive. This is what President Trump said yesterday.
They're raising interest rates too fast. That's my opinion, but I certainly have confidence. But I think it'll straighten. They're raising interest rates too fast because they think the economy is so good. But I think that they will get it pretty soon. I really do.
So he's talking about the Federal Reserve. He believes one of the reasons that the stock market has taken a hit, which a lot of economists actually agree with. When you hear reports coming out of the markets, a lot of them believe that the Fed rate hikes are hurting stocks. You know, a lot of people went into stocks when interest rates were really low because that's where you can make your money, was the stock market. You couldn't make enough money in the Treasury or in savings accounts because interest rates were really low, so you would put it in the stock market. Well, now that interest rates are starting to go up, it's really affecting the stock market as well. Trump also tweeted this out 2 days ago. He said, the only problem our economy has is the Fed. They don't have a feel for the market. They don't understand necessary trade wars or strong dollars or even Democrat shutdowns over borders. The Fed is like a powerful golfer who can't score because he has no touch. He can't putt. Shows what he was doing over the Christmas break golfing. But go ahead.
And if you have no skin in the stock market, you certainly are happy with the price of gasoline these days. And a lot of more and more places, it's under $2.
Under $2. I didn't think I would ever see that again in my lifetime.
And oil a barrel is now down to $42.50, I think I saw.
Yeah. A lot of that has to do with oversupply as well. The U.S. has become exported a lot of gasoline, a lot of oil right now, which also helps lower the prices.
We've seen travel increase with consumer confidence. People are hitting the road, buying more gas. Demand is up, so that also drives prices down.
Yeah, well, as long as the supply can meet that high demand, which it seems like the oversupply can meet that high demand. Yeah, that helps lower gas prices.
Now, you mentioned what President Trump has been saying about the Fed the past few days. Now, some people are saying that contributed to the big drop on Monday, Christmas Eve, of more than 650 points, as well as Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin inexplicably making calls to banks over the weekend from his Mexican vacation, asking him if they're still liquid, and then issuing an announcement saying, hey, everything's fine with the banks.
Yeah, and I think he was just trying to ease some fears, but it kind of had the opposite effect for a lot of people.
Somebody aptly compared it to your local health department all of a sudden announcing out of the blue, the water is safe to drink.
Yeah.
First thing you're thinking is, I'm not drinking that water.
But, I mean, even though he was probably doing it just like the health department, they did it to calm fears. It might be for no reason, But they did have the opposite effect.
Well, you know what they say about the best of intentions.
Yeah, exactly. But I do have to say this. This is more of a philosophical point, but this is something I believed for a long time. A lot of people think it's not right for the president of the United States or even any politician to really criticize what the Fed is doing. I completely disagree with that. I am always skeptical of too much concentrated power with little accountability. I have always felt like the Federal Reserve has a lot of power over our economy. They have power over our money supply, interest rates, and all of that stuff. They really have a ton of power over our economy. Just look at your dollar bill, if anybody carries cash anymore. It's called a Federal Reserve note. They have a lot of power, and I think they should be accountable, and I think they should be criticized sometimes by the president, by politicians, by media, by the others for what they are doing if they believe they're not making the right decisions. I don't think they're oracles up high on a mountain that can do no wrong. They're people just like us, and sometimes they make the wrong decisions. I think they've been making the wrong decision for years, which is kind of why we're in this mess in the first place. We probably should have started raising interest rates years ago to make it more normalized instead of right now. That being said, in terms of the big picture, I really have no problem with Trump criticizing the Fed. I mean, sometimes the way he criticizes the Fed, or it's just like the way he criticizes people, goes a little too far for me. But the actual criticisms itself, I have no problem with it. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of things I've read lately that agree with Trump that the Fed should not raise interest rates right now. We'll talk about that next. We'll take your calls and texts as well. It's 6:49 here on Good Morning Orlando. So we were just talking about Trump versus the Federal Reserve. By the way, speaking of Trump, just on a side note, my girlfriend gave me a really cool gift for Christmas. That's the deal with Trump. Let's just say that. I don't want to give it away. What you have to do is you can follow me on Instagram. Just search Michael Yaffee, and then you can see it, or you can send me a friend request on Facebook, and it's up there as well.
What a tease. What a tease. Oh, man.
Yeah, let's just say it has something to do with Trump. It's actually really funny. It was perfect. So you have to check that out. That was by my girlfriend. So we were talking about Trump versus the Fed. And I was saying in the last segment, because a lot of people say the Fed is independent. They're supposed to be independent. The president shouldn't even bother with what the Fed is doing. Oh, how could he say this about the Fed? This is breaking so much precedent, yada, yada, yada. And I'm totally with the president on this. The Federal Reserve has so much power. The Federal Reserve chairman is appointed by the president. The president actually has the power to fire the chairman if he wants to. The Federal Reserve is something that was created by the federal government and regulates the money supply, basically, which is our money supply. It has all of this power over our economy. When it makes a move to raise interest rates or lower interest rates, it can affect the stock market, but the overall economy. It can affect your savings. And the president's not supposed to say anything if he disagrees? I understand what the intellectuals are going to tell me. Intellectually, you have to make sure it's independent because it doesn't want to be influenced by political factors and yada, yada, yada. But it is. These are still people. And it should be somewhat influenced by those things if they are making wrong decisions. And I think they are right now. I was reading a really great piece from Investors Business Daily, and they were pointing out they don't understand why the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates right now. Because the Federal Reserve's goal is to keep inflation down and unemployment low, right? Well, inflation is already at their target. The Fed's preferred inflation measure is running about 2% a year. 2% a year is right where the Federal Reserve wants it. And in fact, the Fed's Open Market Committee expects inflation to fall next year, not rise, but go down to 1.9%. If inflation is already targeted to go down next year, why would you continue raising interest rates right now? I don't know. So the other thing that the Federal Reserve looks at is unemployment. It says, meanwhile, as far as unemployment, it is the best job market in decades. At 3.7%, it's a job hunter's market. So unemployment is really low. Unemployment's really low. Inflation is really low. Then all you have to do is look at economic growth. The Federal Reserve thinks GDP will grow about 3% this year, which some thought was unsustainable. But they say it forecasts next year for growth dropping to just 2.3%, weaker even than its earlier estimate of 2.5%. So if the GDP is going to drop, that's going to mean inflation is going to drop. I don't think it's going to drop that much. I really don't understand why the Federal Reserve is raising rates. The only reason they are is because, one, what Trump said is exactly right. They believe the economy's good and they don't want the economy to overheat. Trump was right when he said that. But the other reason is because interest rates have been artificially low in this country for too long. After the Great Recession, they put it to practically zero, and they kept it there throughout the Obama presidency. For too long, they did that. So now they're trying to experiment getting it back at a normal level, but the markets and our business environment have already gotten used to those artificially low interest rates. To raise them too fast, it's going to hurt the market. It should have been raised gradually years ago, not just right now. So they're trying to make up for it, but I think they're doing it too fast. I think Trump makes an excellent point, and we'll see what they do next year because there's some talk that they might not raise interest rates anymore right now. We'll see what happens there. All right, Alan Spector is going to come in with the latest news here at the top of the hour. We were talking about the government shutdown earlier in the show. We're going to get back to that. Alan Spector has the latest on that. And, of course, shoppers are returning to stores to return gifts that they didn't like. I'm not returning any gifts. I liked all my gifts. Just saying, it was a good Christmas. I hope you had a good Christmas as well. It's 6:59 here on Good Morning Orlando. Yes, and that's the day after Christmas edition of Good Morning Orlando. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas holiday yesterday and got all the gifts you want. And if you didn't, well, you can take them back like half the country is probably going to be doing at the malls today or whatever they do their shopping.
And everybody's tree is drying out as we speak.
Oh, yeah? Well, do you take out your tree the day after Christmas?
No, we usually do it the first of the year.
Yeah, I think most people would probably do that. We always had a fake tree, so I don't know, but I appreciate.
Well, that's sad.
No, it's not. My mom is allergic to the pine. So.
Artificial would be the best way to say that.
Okay, artificial. Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not. It's still real, so it feels like Christmas.
Fake tree.
Wait until I put up a tree one year. I'm putting Trump's wall around the bottom. Just saying. So I appreciate everyone listening. There's a story out of the New York Times that came out just the past couple of days, and I want to get your take on it. I want to know if you're concerned about where this could lead, because when I look at topics, that's what I try to do. I try to look at the big picture, and I try to look down the road. When you look at the surface of it, I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, yeah, this is a great idea, but I'm not so sure. It's by Andrew Ross Sorkin in the New York Times. He tweeted out as well that he's been working on this project for months. What he does throughout the story is he talks about how a lot of these mass shooters, including Mateen, who shot up the Pulse nightclub here in Orlando, were using credit cards to buy their guns. So Mateen, for instance, used a MasterCard, American Express, and 3 Visa cards to get all his ammunition and the guns. He points out in the article, he says, mass shootings routinely set off a national debate on guns, usually focused on regulating firearms and on troubled youths. Little attention is paid to the financial industry that has become an instrumental, if unwitting, enabler of carnage. So what they're saying is the credit card companies are partially responsible for this. Now, some people think it's time for the banks and the credit card companies to start monitoring these purchases, flagging them, and reporting them. Former New York police fraud investigator Kevin Sullivan said this in the article. He said, banks will complain this is the government's job and it's not our job, but you know what? They are the only ones with the ability to do this. Now, bank and credit card companies have responded to this. They say it's not their responsibility to create systems to track gun purchases that would allow them to report suspicious patterns. This is what the Visa spokeswoman said. She said, "We do not believe Visa should be in a position of setting restrictions on the sale of lawful goods or services." Remember, these sales were lawful. They weren't breaking the law in buying these things, some of these mass shooters. So how could the credit card company be monitoring and flagging something you're doing that's perfectly legal to do? Says, she continued on. She said, "Our role in commerce is to efficiently process, protect, and settle all legal payments. Asking Visa or other payment networks to arbitrate what legal goods can be purchased sets a dangerous precedent." I have to say, I agree. That is kind of a dangerous precedent. But more and more people are calling for this. In fact, it goes beyond that. There have been some financial companies who don't want to finance any gun purchases at all. So if anyone wants to buy a gun, there has been talk that they should just not finance it. That, nope, we don't like that you're making that purchase and we will not be a part of it because we don't support guns in this country. Is this the way we should go, or is this, like the Visa spokeswoman said, setting a dangerous precedent?
Well, I think the obvious question is, where do you draw the line? Because if you start flagging gun purchases, then does any other suspicious purchase come within the purview of the company to be reported to whomever they're reporting this to?
Exactly, and that's the slippery slope that I kind of worry about as well.
I mean, I'm concerned as anybody about gun violence in this country and how to control the distribution of weapons in among the citizens, but I'm not sure this is the way to go. And I'm worried about, where do you go from here once you start with this?
Because it would set a precedent, because if you go to its fullest extent, which some people want to do, and have banks literally not even allow you to buy guns, which is a legal thing you can right now. Is that a good thing where you can have a credit card company telling you what you can and cannot buy with that credit card? And we're talking about legal items. We're not talking about something that's illegal. Obviously, a credit card company could say you can't buy that. That's illegal.
Yeah.
But this is a legal product. Where does that stop? Where do you draw the line there?
What if the company is anti-smoking and says you can't buy cigarettes with our credit card?
That is a great point. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good point. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. We'll take your calls and texts next. It's 7:19 here on Good Morning Orlando. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply here on Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 93.1 FM. And, of course, you can still get us on AM 540. We've been talking about this New York Times article. The title, How Credit Cards Are Used to Finance Mass Shootings. And it implies that we should start having credit card companies monitor your purchases, basically. Now, what it says here near the end of the article, it says elected officials could force the financial system to act. In 29 states, consumers cannot use credit cards to buy lottery tickets because legislators don't want consumers racking up debt gambling. And under the Gun Control Act of 1968, firearms dealers must report if someone buys 2 or more handguns in a span of 5 business days. Well, as anything else, they just get around that. What they do is it says the requirement can be evaded by simply buying at more than one store. But a system involving the banks and credit card networks could have the opportunity to flag purchases. Is this where we should go? I think the goal here is not to monitor purchases. I think the goal here is, by those on the left, is to have these banks eventually ban the purchases of firearms where you can't use credit cards to buy it. That's what their goal, because they haven't been able to pass gun control. They haven't been able to pass ammunition control. This is their next step to try to curtail the Second Amendment in this country. That's what I believe they are trying to do here. And it's a dangerous precedent. Now, people are just going to use cash. I mean, that was what would happen. Oh, okay, is that better that they all use cash? Eventually that's what would happen if you did it through the credit cards. But what are you going to start monitoring cash? I don't know how you would do that. Let's take calls here. Let's go to John in Altamont. John, what's your take on all this?
Good morning, sir. I never agree with you in the Buttman. 99% of the time I disagree, but on this, I'm with you 100%. It's insane that somebody would even think of bringing this up, that the credit card companies need to get involved and see what you're buying. It's absolutely crazy. This guy shouldn't be working at the newspaper. He should be working at McDonald's. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Well, John, I appreciate it. And why? I mean, I want you to explain a little further. Why does it bother you so much?
Sure, because it's a credit card. They don't need to know what I'm buying. Obviously, it's legal.
Yeah.
It's another invasion of my privacy. Is the way I'm looking at it.
Okay. Yeah, I completely agree with you. There are definitely privacy concerns here. Is it really the bank's job to be? I mean, they kind of monitor what you buy anyways because it's on your bank statement.
I was going to say there's not a lot of privacy involved once you start putting purchases on a credit card, because if you look at your statement, it shows where you shopped and in some cases what you actually bought.
A lot of times they sell the data too to other outlets.
The question is, should that information be passed on to government authorities with the idea that this was a suspicious purchase of some sort?
Yeah, I mean, it's just something uneasy about that privacy-wise, the government kind of monitoring. Let's go to John in Titusville. John, what do you think about this?
Hey, good morning, Mike. I think just think of the scenario if a credit card company came up and said, well, if you get an abortion, you can't use our credit card to do that. There would be mass hysteria. There would be
that's a good point.
People, it would be ridiculous, and I don't think it's a slippery slope. I think it is it's there already. We're not sliding down the slope. It's incrementalism times a million. I think the biggest. I'd love to hear you do a segment on the upcoming ban on bump stocks. I mean that.
Well, I actually did talk about that. I think the last show, just for one segment. I believe it's unconstitutional. Even if you support a ban on bump stocks, it should be done through the legislature, not done through executive order.
Well, I personally don't. I don't think you should be able to do it at all. It's shall not be infringed.
Right.
Is pretty. But they're talking about you can't even. It's not that you can't buy them. You can't even own them. So confiscation will be legal.
Yeah, that's true.
For the future.
That's completely true. They're telling people to destroy them. That's sort of another topic, but I totally get what you're saying. Let's take one more call here. Let's go to Scott in Orlando. Scott, what do you think about all this?
I think the government would like for us to get away from cash, go all on credit.
Some other governments are already, going in that direction, but go ahead.
So they can track every dime that we have. You can't work under the table for cash because they can't tax that cash. The drug dealers will have to monitor their cash. It's just a government control of, watching the people and knowing exactly what they're doing, the money they spend, and what the wealth worth is. Thank you, Yaffee.
I actually believe there is some truth to that. I mean, they're going to sell it on that it's safer than cash, but I think there is some in government circles who would like that because it could track drug purchases and illegal purchases and stuff like that. I think it would be incredibly difficult to pass anything like that soon, but we're kind of just doing it willingly anyway because I barely ever carry cash. So it's not like the government would have to ban cash anyways. We're just kind of already doing it.
And I kind of like the idea of being able to track for my own personal purposes what I've been buying, where my money went in the past month.
All right. So 7:29 here on Good Morning Orlando. Alan Spector, you're going to have, what are you going to have for us at the bottom of the hour?
Some news.
Oh, okay. Some news. We'll get to that next. It is 7:29 on Good Morning Orlando. So I noticed this headline yesterday from the Washington Examiner. It was other places as well. But it said coalition strikes ISIS targets in Syria ahead of U.S. withdrawal. And at first I was thinking, I don't understand. Trump told me that ISIS is defeated. If ISIS is defeated and we're coming home because ISIS is defeated, why are we still bombing them? If the job is done, why do we have airstrikes against them? I don't really understand.
And President Trump also tweeted over the weekend that the Turkish president assured him that that country would take care of eliminating the rest of ISIS.
Yeah, which he originally said was defeated.
The other part of ISIS that we defeated that is still there, that Turkey now has to fight.
This is a big reason why I disagree with Trump on this. I know a lot of you support Trump's decision to pull the troops out of Syria. I just can't go there.
I'm wondering if Turkey's president is now in charge of our foreign policy because supposedly Trump made the decision to withdraw U.S. troops based on a phone call with the president of Turkey.
Yeah. Well, after a phone call. And about that tweet, I'll read that tweet exactly. We were talking about that. It said, President Erdogan of Turkey has very, very strongly informed me that he will eradicate whatever is left of ISIS in Syria, and he is a man who can do it. Plus, Turkey is right next door. Our troops are coming home. Well, he's not the only one saying this as well. You have Rand Paul, who was on State of the Union on CNN on Sunday. He was basically saying exactly what Trump is saying here. Here it is.
So when the president declares victory over ISIS, he's exactly right. We took back 99% of their land. Aren't these people going to stand up and now fight for themselves? Can they not do anything? And it doesn't work to have Americans there policing Muslim lands. It just engenders more terrorism. The longer Americans stay, the more terrorism you'll have. We are so forward deployed that we can attack on a moment's notice from anywhere on the planet. So us leaving doesn't mean we don't have to be involved. You know, we are offshore, under the waters. We are everywhere around the planet. There is nothing about us leaving that means that we couldn't be involved if we had to be involved. But really, the people who live there, the Muslims who live in these lands need to police the Muslims who live in these lands. If it's Americans, it'll always be seen by those who live there as some sort of religious crusade, and it encourages more terrorism. So the sooner we get out of that mess, the better.
So I have a lot of respect for Rand Paul. As you know, I'm always playing cuts with him that I like, but I disagree with a lot of what he said there. The first thing he said there was basically, we have defeated ISIS. We've taken out 99% of their territory. That's true. We've taken out 99% of their territory, and Trump and the U.S. military deserve a lot of credit for that. But there's still, some 30,000 fighters they've estimated, ISIS fighters still there. If we leave, they're going to try to come back. And he also said this idea that can't they take care of themselves? Well, how can the Kurds take care of themselves when they have Russia, Turkey, and Iran in there messing with them, as long as so-called messing with ISIS, which is just secondary to most of those countries.
And this is what Defense Secretary James Mattis suggested, I think, in his letter of resignation, that we're abandoning these people, that we made commitments to help in the fight, and we're just pulling out and leaving them holding the bag.
And Turkey has an axe to grind with the Kurds.
Yes.
And there's lots of Kurds in Syria, and they may use the ISIS approach as a pretext of doing something against the Kurds.
And that really worries me because President is saying right here that Turkey's going to go in there. That's what he's saying. You think Turkey's going to go in there and just try to defeat ISIS? No, they're going to try to take territory, and they're going to try to hurt the Kurds as well, which you pointed out, Alan Spector, we have commitments with.
Yeah, and doesn't it also worry you when Russian President Vladimir Putin supports something that we do?
Yeah.
Don't you start thinking, well, maybe we're not on the right side of this issue?
And a lot of people think, well, it's none of our business. We need to leave. But all of this stuff has ramifications to us as well. For one, they had a huge refugee crisis in Europe after what was going on over there. You know, that affects world politics. But when ISIS started gaining all this territory and started gaining power, that hurts our national security as well. So,
like it or not, we're a member of the planet. And
we are.
Yes,
yeah. We can't just put a big dome over the planet.
Big dome over our U.S., just forget everybody else. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, so I just can't support what he's doing because I think, we had a very minimal presence, but that minimal presence was very effective from what I understand. And something's going to fill that vacuum, and I'm afraid we're going to have to go back. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. It's 7:50 here on Good Morning Orlando. Yes, it is the day after Christmas edition of Good Morning Orlando here on News Radio 93.1 WFLA FM. Still get us on AM 540. Make sure if you got a new Amazon Echo or Google Home for Christmas, you can just listen to us there as well on the Echo. Just say, listen to News Radio 93.1. Tell Alexa that. And on Google Home, tell Google to listen to News Radio 93.1 WFLA. And on Apple and the Apple Home device, tell Siri the same things. So one last thing I did want to say about the Syria thing. When Rand Paul was talking about Muslims need to police their own land because when it's U.S. fighting over there, it's seen as a religious affront against them. When it comes to the radicals like ISIS, anybody who is against their radical beliefs, they consider it a religious front. So even if Muslims, like some of the Kurds are Muslim themselves, if they don't believe in the radical Islamist ideology of ISIS, ISIS takes that as a religious front as well. So it's not like they just hate us because we're Christians. They hate other Muslims also. Whatever doesn't align with their radical Islamist belief, ISIS is going to be against. So what Rand Paul was saying there, I don't necessarily agree with either. There's also Christian groups. And this idea that Turkey and Russia are going to eradicate ISIS for us, yes, they have fought ISIS in some areas, but they're going to do what's in their best interest. So Turkey, what's in their best interest is to get rid of some of the Kurds, the Kurdish groups there. So do you think they're going to care if ISIS starts taking out some of the Kurds? They're going to let them do it. Whatever is in their best interest, and sometimes their best interest is not eradicating ISIS. Sometimes they'll bomb them if it gets in the way, and sometimes they won't. But this is going to be a big problem for us. All right, Alan Spector is joining me in the studio right now. He's going to have the latest news at the top of the hour, including the latest on the government shutdown. It's 7:59 here on Good Morning Orlando. So I hope everyone is surviving the government shutdown okay. I mean, everyone's hunkered down, ready to go. Okay, I think most people listening right now probably are not too concerned about it, but we are in a partial government shutdown. About a quarter of the government is shut down. Now, there are some important departments that are a part of this, including the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice. One thing I did hear last week that could be a solution to part of what's going on here is the wall has to do with Homeland Security. So the wall funding would be a part of Homeland Security budget. What they could do, the Democrats and Republicans, to alleviate some of this is pass some continuing resolutions on all the other departments other than Homeland Security. So at least we could get some of the government back up and running, like the Justice Department. And that would be a way, if Trump could actually come out and say that, that actually might make him look good. Say, look, I'm willing to alleviate some of this. I just want the wall, but we can pass some of these other things.
And, Mike, that makes way too much sense, and I believe there's no chance of it happening because of that.
In Washington?
Yeah.
It is Washington, D.C. we're talking about. So
please.
You're exactly right.
Get real.
In fact, it was right before the Christmas break where Chuck Schumer spoke about the shutdown and said Trump's not getting what he wants.
It will never pass the Senate. Not today, not next week, not next year. So, Mr. President, President Trump, if you want to open the government, you must abandon the wall. Plain and simple.
All right, so he's saying you want to abandon the wall. They are willing to fund other types of border security, about $1.6 billion worth, but they are against the wall. No doubt part of that is for political reasons because they don't want to give Trump the win, and Trump, one of his biggest campaign promises was building a wall. Now, President Trump yesterday had spoke to the troops, but also was asked about the government shutdown. This is what he said.
I can't tell you when the government's going to be open. I can tell you it's not going to be open until we have a wall, a fence, whatever they'd like to call it. I'll call it whatever they want. But it's all the same thing. It's a barrier from people pouring into our country from drugs. So you have drugs, you have human trafficking, you have illegal people coming into our country. We can't do that. We don't know who they are. In the caravan, 618 people were very bad, in some cases, criminals. Wanted for very bad. You saw the one man, he said he was wanted for murder. I don't want them in the country. The only way you're going to do it is to have a physical barrier, meaning a wall. And if you don't have that, then we're just not open.
So there might be one possible solution to all this, that compromise, and some Republicans, believe it or not, Alan Spector, are calling for this as well. This is from none other than Newt Gingrich. And what he is saying, and remember, he's a big supporter of Trump, has a book out on Trump, says, fund the border wall and save the dreamers. He says, rather than shut down the government, why don't the president and Congress agree to appropriate the $5 billion he wants to build the border wall and provide legal status and a path to citizenship to the dreamers? Now, that would include, and actually President Trump proposed an immigration bill that this was a part of and then kind of backed out of it later on, but it would include dreamers who came to the United States as children brought by their parents before 2007, have been educated in this country and are high school graduates or in U.S. schools, have never been convicted of a felony or a significant misdemeanor. And he says in most polls, some 85% of Americans say they believe these dreamers should be allowed to remain, to study, and to work. Voters don't like to reward people for coming here illegally, but the dreamers were brought here at an average age of 6, so they really had no choice in the matter. So more and more people, I've noticed, are calling for this deal on both sides of the aisle, which is really interesting.
It is, and the thing that also interests me, and I don't know why it's not discussed more, maybe it is being discussed and I'm just not paying attention, but you mentioned, of course, President Trump campaigned on building a border wall and also campaigned that Mexico would pay for it.
The Democrats keep bringing that up, actually.
Repeatedly, he said that. And now we're looking at us paying for it with this idea advanced by the Trump administration that, well, we're saving so much money or making so much money on this trade deal with Mexico that, in effect, they're paying for it.
Yeah, and as someone who supports building the wall, I don't buy that argument by Trump that that's kind of a way Mexico is paying for it, because it's not quite how trade works, really. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but that is a big sticking point with a lot of Democrats, as you said Mexico was going to pay for it. Now, Mick Mulvaney, of all people, over the weekend said that there would be no way Mexico could pay for it because the Department of Homeland Security has to get money from the Treasury. Like, they can't just accept money from another government. They would have to get it through the Treasury. Now, I guess technically Mexico could write a check to the Treasury, and then it could go towards the wall or something. But it doesn't look like Mexico's going to pay for it, and that is a sticking point with a lot of Democrats who want to use that.
Personally, I never thought that was a realistic option anyway, but that's what President Trump kept saying.
And I don't think Trump needed to make that point to win the election. I think a lot of people liked the idea of the wall. A lot of his supporters liked the idea of a wall and really didn't care if Mexico paid for it or if we did. And it was something he kind of brought up, but it's kind of hurting him in the long run, it looks like.
And the other thing we're kind of hearing these days is the wall, which President Trump originally promised would be a concrete wall.
Yeah.
Is
and
now
he had some builders actually build prototypes.
And now it's being referred to as steel slats. The president referred to it as a fence yesterday.
So he's willing to compromise a little bit on those things.
I understand he's willing to go as far as a bamboo curtain.
Oh, a bamboo curtain?
Yes. So
nobody wants to go through the bamboo curtain.
No.
I mean, I'm against that. I think he should stick with the concrete wall. I liked a lot of the prototypes I saw of some builders doing that. So he's trying to compromise. I get he's trying to make the deal. He says he is the deal maker, and maybe that's going to work. Maybe it's not. I say we get the wall. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 or standard message and data rates apply. It's 8:20 here on Good Morning Orlando. And just a quick comment on this child who unfortunately died on Christmas Day in U.S. custody, Guatemalan child who was trying, to get into the country. We really need to know what he died of before we can make any rash judgments, because this could be diseases that he caught traveling all those miles up there. It's a dangerous route, and who knows what something like that can do to a child's health. And it seems like some people are complaining that the Department of Homeland Security did not do all they could, but they took him to the hospital twice. I mean, what exactly else do they want them to do? We'll have to find out more information before we can really get all of, we'll have to reserve judgment until we get all of the information on this, but we'll see. We got a text that came in and said this, talking about the government shutdown, said any accountant will tell you that $5 billion is such a small amount in our federal budget. It's like a rounding error in your checkbook. Call and annoy your senators to build the wall, says. I mean, the Democrats, there is no doubt that the Democrats can argue. They're not going to be able to argue that this is a money issue, that we're trying to save money, we're trying to lower the debt, stuff like that. They're not going to be able to make that argument. For one, it's Democrats. It's big spending liberal Democrats. That's what they like to do. But it's such a small amount in the big scheme of things. You're not going to be able to say this is a funding issue. This is about not giving Trump the wall because they don't want to give Trump that political win. Now, some people are saying, well, Trump is using politics because he wants the political win. Okay, there might be some truth to that, but Trump has supported a wall from the beginning, and more people are saying that the wall would be effective. And that's why I don't want him to just have concrete slats. I want him to have an actual wall, because if he puts up some kind of fence or something that's not effective, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt him in the long run. We need to, if we're going to do this and we're going to have a physical barrier, we have to make sure it's concrete or steel. I guess it could be steel, but I have to make sure it's built right and it's tall enough so they really aren't able to get over it. And I think it would be effective, even though a lot of Democrats are saying, oh, no, it's just a false argument. It can't be effective. Walls are effective lots of other places in the world. Just ask Israel, who put up fencing and walls on their border, and it has been very effective. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Bertha in DeLand. Bertha, what's your take on this?
Good morning, Yaffee. You forgot to mention a department that inspects our food is shut down. But what I really wanted to call you, I agree with Newt Gingrich. The only winning card that Trump have is the Dreamer card, because Nancy Pelosi has the authority to open up the government on the 3rd. She also has the probably submit the CR that they already voted on, and she has the votes to override Trump. He has nothing but the Dreamer's card to play with.
Yeah, and this is something that it's really a deal, and I thank you for your call, Bertha. It's really a deal they should have made months ago. And by the way, I've noticed a lot in the media, and a lot of Democrats are trying to use the sympathy card, saying all these federal workers are out of work for so long time, we really need to feel sorry for them, shutdown stories, yada, yada, yada. I don't think the majority of American people are going to buy into that, especially Republicans. For one, the government, when you're a conservative like me, you already believe the government's too big, so you believe there shouldn't be that many workers in the first place. I'm not totally unsympathetic to their plight or anything, but the job of the federal government isn't to pay workers. That's not why the federal government exists. The federal government has certain responsibilities, and the goal should be making sure the federal government is doing the best job it can. And Trump believes it's not doing the best job it can unless there is a physical wall. So the goal isn't to make sure 800,000 people are paid. That's not why the government exists. It's not there to sustain itself for the purpose of sustaining itself. It's there to do the job for the country. And Trump believes without the wall, it's not doing the job for the country. So this whole trying to feel sorry for people who aren't they're going to get paid later. You can make arrangements. You really should plan for that kind of thing anyway. I know it can be hard sometimes, but that whole sympathy thing, it just doesn't work for me. All right, it is Alan Spector is going to come in and talk about the latest news at the bottom of the hour. He has a good news story, local story dealing with Christmas. That's coming up next, and much more. It is 8:29 here on Good Morning Orlando. So it's the day after Christmas. We've talked a lot of politics, international stories, Second Amendment stories, and so forth. But I thought I would end the show today with some good news, because there was actually a lot of good things happening around the country yesterday and here in Florida as well. And what a perfect day to share them, a little uplifting moments for you today. And Alan Spector, you said you were inspired that I was doing this,
yes,
and you had found a story to uplift us today. So go ahead.
Yeah, a Florida couple is probably still stunned by what their son gave them for Christmas. Brady Singer got a $4.25 million bonus when he signed with the Kansas City Royals last summer after winding up his career at the University of Florida as the best player in college baseball. His mom received a very special Christmas card yesterday, and this is his mom reading that card from her son Brady.
There's something I want to give to you. I am paying off the loan from the bank. Also, I paid off all your debt as well. Now, instead of trying to save money every weekend to replace the savings account you drained on traveling to play baseball, you can spend it on yourself.
He paid off his parents' debts.
Wow.
Brady Singer, a right-hander with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, signed off with, "Your giving hearts helped to shape my tiny dream into a reality.
That is a great story.
Someone reacting to that story on Twitter wrote, I know there's no crying in baseball, but I'm crying.
Yeah, that's a great story. And really, the parents, you just know they must be good parents then.
Yes.
That they were able to not only raise a son who made it to the major leagues, but was able to do something like that and to show his appreciation, which, I'm sure he wouldn't have got there without his parents' help. So
exactly.
That was a really good story. So there's another story I wanted to share here. It's from our friends at Fox 35, actually about a local restaurant in Leesburg called the Ramshackle Cafe, and they took some time out Christmas Day to actually help others. And I have the audio of that story here. Go ahead, Tom Benson.
Get one, Chris. You right.
We all cooked it. We all put in. Some people took this, some people took that.
85 bags filled with the gift of Christmas dinner.
They had ham, turkey, bacon, macaroni and cheese, potato salad, sweet potato pie.
Staff at the Ramshackle Cafe in Leesburg setting up tables in the parking lot to give meals to homeless people in the community. Robert Bryant, an employee at the restaurant, putting this all together.
Growing up, we didn't have everything, but now I can do things for other people.
Some of the people taking these meals telling me this isn't only feeding their bellies, but their spirits too.
It feels good. It feels great that I can go somewhere and eat.
Thomas Cowboy Horde saying he's having a rough time.
It's kind of hard when you have no work. I don't want to go out there and panhandle. It's not my MO. I like to work. And it's kind of hard.
But people like this give him hope.
You stay positive and know that God's there on your side. He's always on my side.
Robert telling me he cares about Thomas and all these people.
I'm hoping that they know somebody out there cares about them.
Saying you should too.
I figure if somebody sees somebody like me doing it, somebody else will try to help me do it.
In Leesburg, Samantha Sosa, Fox 35 News.
So I thought that was a really good story. A local restaurant who did not have to do that. I'm sure a lot of the employees, at first thought they wanted the day off, but instead of taking the day off, they took some time to help their community, and that's a good thing. I have one more story of a group that's actually helping disabled veterans, and was able to help one disabled veteran this week. And we'll get to that when we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Yes, and it is the day after Christmas edition of Good Morning Orlando. Hope everyone had a really great Christmas, got to spend time with family, got to open some great gifts, and of course, remember the reason for the season, got to celebrate the birth of our Savior and Lord. So I wanted to, since it is Christmas week here, I wanted to share another good news story I found from Fox News. So it turns out that a Purple Heart recipient who is an Army veteran, an injured Army veteran, slightly disabled now, received something very generous from the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which is founded by Frank Siller. He received a mortgage-free home, but not only that, it's a mortgage-free smart home. So there are things in the house, smart devices in the house, that help this disabled veteran live a little easier. Now, Fox News interviewed the founder of this organization, Frank Siller, this week, talking about giving this disabled veteran and other veterans like this one mortgage-free houses. Here it is.
Yeah, Travis, was hurt in 2012, had to wait a long time for his specially adapted house. He could work it off an iPad. He's paralyzed, quadriplegic. It given back a lot of his independence, and we're glad to be able to do this. But there's so many others out there that need these type of homes that are specially adapted for their injuries. And Tunnel to Towers, we have committed to building 200 of those smart homes.
Yeah, you've already built dozens of them. Right?
75 have been delivered or under construction. We do now for Gold Star families. We just delivered 14 mortgage-free homes to Gold Star families. We pay off mortgages for fallen first responders, firefighters, and police officers. You see how many police officers are being shot just because they wear the color blue.
Yeah.
So we're asking most Americans, a lot of your viewers are great, they've supported us over the years many times, for $11 a month. $11 a month. If they donate that, they can do all this work that we need to do for $11 a month.
And how do they do that?
They'll go to tunneltotowers.org. My brother ran through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel on 9/11 to the towers. So with the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, tunneltotowers.org, $11 a month, you could change all these lives, all the families I just talked about, because they're still dying, protecting our country and our community.
All right, so that was Frank Siller from the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And the veteran who received this was a former combat medic, Travis Worrell, and he received, like I said, a mortgage-free smart home. Not only that, but the home was specifically accommodated for him, has wide doorways and walkways, allowing him to move about the home freely in his wheelchair. So someone got a really nice Christmas gift, and someone who really deserves it, someone who fought for our country and was injured in battle. So that was a good news story coming out of that. It's the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, if you want to know more about the organization. Seems like a really great organization to me. So, Day After Christmas edition is almost done. By the way, what you need to do right now is follow me on Instagram. Just search Michael Yaffee and you can follow me, because I posted a picture of the gift my girlfriend gave me for Christmas. And let's just say it has something to do with Trump, a little bit. It's really funny. It was a really great gift. Should I give? I'm not going to give it away. I should tease it. I should give people, make people. You can send me a friend request on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at BeyondReasonR, or you can follow me on Instagram at Michael Yaffee, and you'll find the picture on any one of those. I'm always posting stuff on social media as well, so you'll want to do that. All right, I will be back in tomorrow for Bud. We will have the latest news, weather, and traffic as always, and I'll end the show just like Bud does. God bless you, and God bless America. Catch you next time.